a couple of people have asked me, not many, a couple of people have said to me, if I think something is wrong with the fact of Mark Malabver leading the Jamaica Teachers Association. And I said, well, told one of them, why? And they said, well, given his antecedents, don't you see that as an obvious flashpoint in the negotiations that the JTA president will have with the government, directly interfacing with the finance ministry? And I said, well, but the potential is there, but I'd like to believe that the JTA delegates, the voters, when they were asked to choose, they would have known what they were getting themselves into. So if they chose him, and they did choose him in a democratic process, we hear no argument about the process, then it's not an issue for me, because if they know his antecedents and they vote him in, then who are you to say that they made the wrong choice or there was a flaw in what they decided to do insofar as their leader is concerned? That was my position to the first query. The second query, along the same lines, I said the same thing, because I don't believe in, somebody was once this or somebody was this and they can't play a certain role because of the taint of political affiliation. But I thought about it more deeply and I said, we're in a country where a professional is asked to opine on a national issue. This one concerning the Prime Minister's statutory declarations. And that professional who can give any perspective on the issue based on their learning and training says something. People say, well, because your professional opinion is favorable to the Prime Minister, you cannot then therefore serve in a public office, in this office. And then all sorts of reasons were invented and people demonstrated publicly. You had the case of Dr. Peter Phillips, who wasn't fit enough to go to Parliament to sit in the air-conditioned confines of Gordon House, standing in the hot sun outside Hero Circle, venting his spleen and registering his disgust with Dennis Chung as FID Chief Technical Director. It was so serious that man who was unfit to sit in air-conditioned luxury, have his drinks or whatever brought to him by the staff at Parliament, was fit enough to walk with protesters and stand in the sun to register his opposition to Dennis Chung. That's the kind of country we live in. So it's against that frame that I assessed this Mark Malabver thing. But even then, I still moved on and said, you know what, there's nothing there for me to bother myself with. But that has changed. And here's why that has changed. Tuesday, August 19, RJR News reports an article posted on their website. The headline says, new JTA president denies partisan politics affecting stance in wage talks. And the story says, newly installed JTA President Mark Malabver has denied that partisan politics has influenced the stance of the association toward the current wage negotiations with the Ministry of Finance. The JTA walked out of Friday's meeting to discuss a new contract for teachers after the ministry failed to make an improved offer from no increase in the first year and a 2.5% increase for the other 2 years. The union has also issued an ultimatum, which is seemingly being ignored by the Ministry of Finance. There has been speculation, the RJR article says, that the newly installed JTA president's position on the negotiation is political posturing, considering his previous declaration of a support for the People's National Party. Mr. Malabver had sought to represent the PNP in Western St. Thomas for the September 2020 general election. The party eventually selected another candidate. Mr. Malabver responded to the concerns Tuesday on the morning agenda on Power 106. Here's the quote now. I have not declared any support for any of the political parties. Let's get that out of the way. The JTA, he says, consists of a diverse group of individuals across all constituencies, across all parties, and across all communities. When I step out as president, I step out to represent every single teacher, 25,000 teachers across the island. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with the livelihood of 25,000 teachers. The words of Mark Malabver. So you could then understand why I had to get into the fray where Malabver's position is concerned, because I was willing to look away, notwithstanding the parallel I drew with Dennis Chung, and notwithstanding the concerns that were expressed. But Malabver's comment has brought me into the fray. Mark Malabver told Morning Agenda yesterday, I have not declared any support for any of the political parties. Full stop. All right. I go to November 11, 2019, an article written by Kimon Francis, who was then at the Jamaica Observer, principal turned politician, with a picture of Mark Malabver. It says, principal of Yallas High School in St. Thomas, Mark Malabver, is set to enter representational politics after 19 years as an educator. Malabver, in an exclusive interview with the Jamaica North and East last Wednesday, disclosed that he is expected to represent the opposition PNP in the next parliamentary election, constitutionally due by 2021. He's expected to contest the St. Thomas Western seat, now represented by James Robertson. He says, quote, I decided to enter representational politics for two basic reasons. Several persons in the constituency approached me to ask whether or not I had an interest. I initially turned down the offer, but they were persistent because they believe I have what it takes to win the constituency and offer quality leadership. So in November 2019, he declared himself a PNP man who was seeking the party's nod to run in Western St. Thomas. August 5, 2020. Nationwide News Network reports the PNP's Mark Malabver says he remains the party's candidate-elect to challenge the JLP's James Robertson, despite what he admits are some issues in the constituency. Nationwide News understand that some comrades have been calling on the PNP to install Marsha Francis to contest West St. Thomas and boot Mark Malabver. Then another Nationwide article, August 7, 2020, Marsha Francis to replace Mark Malabver as PNP candidate-elect in West St. Thomas. And it goes in to say the PNP has confirmed a report by our news center earlier this week that it has drafted councillor for the Cedar Valley Division, Marsha Francis, to replace Mark Malabver as a party's candidate for West St. Thomas. And then a Gleaner article, August 10, 2020. The PNP's Mark Malabver is dismissing claims that he was forced to abandon his prospective candidacy in the race against James Robertson. The PNP announced on Friday that Malabver would be unable to represent the party because he was focusing on ensuring a smooth start to the new school year at Yallas High School. And then we have this voice insert from Mark Malabver talking to Nationwide News when we called him to say that we heard in 2020 that he was in some problems and may not find favor with the PNP to get the nod to be the candidate for the 2020 general election.
I can't speak to that. I mean, the party is doing their due process. I'm aware that there have been some issues in the constituency. We're moving to resolve those issues as they are. As it is now, I am the candidate for Western St. Thomas. Well, there's nothing to really fight for, as I said to you. There are some issues that we are looking to resolve, and I'm confident that once those issues are resolved, we will move forward as one.
And then he said this again in the same interview.
The Secretary is aware of some of the issues. And as I said to you, we are moving to resolve. No, I'm not prepared to discuss them at this point in time.
So, Mark Malabver, why did you mislead or attempt to mislead the host on the Morning Agenda when you said, I have not declared any support for any of the political parties? What does that mean? Because it can be spun. Is it that you're saying that in this moment, you have not declared any support for any political party? Did you give the impression that you were PNP before? Did you make it known to the host that, listen, you know my antecedents, but right now it's not about politics, which you could have said and which would have been acceptable. But I'm not going to accuse you of lying, Mark Malabver. I'm just asking. Clearly from your words, you sought to mislead. And then this is the problem I'm having with an organization such as the JTA. Did Mark Malabver say to delegates as he made his rounds, I am a PNP man, but I'm a teacher first and foremost. And I'm seeking to represent your interests as best as possible without using or allowing my political affiliation to influence what I do. Did Mark Malabver say that at any of the meetings that he had or any of the forums put on by the JTA where he advertised his well-being to his potential supporters or to his supporters ahead of the vote? And if he didn't do that, is that something that must happen in the JTA? Because I'm certain, in the same way that it appears that the persons he was speaking to did not know that he had these antecedents or this antecedent or these antecedents is correct. They didn't know. It's fair to assume that some teachers would not know either. And did they vote for someone who they didn't know was dipped into the political ink? Again, let me put it on the table. For me, the issue was not an issue before Mr. Malabver sought to mislead by saying, I have not declared any support for any of the political parties. You heard him in the clip say, my party. Don't know which party I attack. Sans? Dream Weekend? So, again, here it is. This country is so small, so rules will duplicate. But why try to mislead about something like that? Mark Malabver is a PNP man. That's a fact the whole country knows. But 5 years later, he comes and he says, no, I'm not a party man. I'm just about the JTA. And then the stance you're taking, how then can people not believe that your adversarial, your bellicose approach to negotiations isn't influenced by a mission to destabilize government JLP and party JLP in this election campaign? Because that's the conclusion many people will draw. And it's unfortunate.